Hey, everybody. Welcome to our first Thursdays at 3 writing workshop with Write 253. I am Michael Heflinger with Write 253. I hope everyone's doing okay out there today on this beautiful Thursday in Tacoma, Pierce County. Um, so today's workshop is on line starters and repetition. And I've got a link here to a poem by Wisława Szymborska. She's a Polish poet, one of my favorite poets of all time. And this is probably my favorite poem by her. And it's read by Amanda Palmer, who is a singer songwriter and a poet. Okay, here's Amanda Palmer reading a bit of Szymborska's poem, Possibilities. And as she's reading, I want you to listen for what you notice about this poem.
Possibilities. I prefer movies. I prefer cats. I prefer the oaks along the Warta. I prefer Dickens to Dostoevsky. I prefer myself liking people to myself loving mankind. I prefer keeping a needle and thread on hand just in case. I prefer the color green. I prefer not to maintain that reason is to blame for everything. I prefer exceptions. I prefer to leave early. I prefer talking to doctors about something else. I prefer the old fine-lined illustrations. I prefer the absurdity of writing poems to the absurdity of not writing poems.
Okay, so you can look on this page and see the rest of the poem is here. And you've probably noticed that every line begins with I prefer, I prefer, I prefer, I prefer. And sometimes there are no alternatives or sort of opposites to those preferences, right? Like I prefer movies, but the question is to what? And I prefer cats, I'm guessing, to dogs, and so on and so on. And sometimes you have some comparisons, like I prefer Dickens to Dostoevsky, or I prefer liking people to myself loving mankind. The rhythm that's created with the line repetition, where it starts the same way, which is called anaphora, Anaphora. What happens is you get this kind of rhythm of expectation. You want the line to keep starting that way. And it can be a really fun tool if you just want to let your brain go and you already know how each line is going to start. You don't have to think about that. The work is already done for you. I did a workshop um, using this technique a long time ago, and the we were all sitting in a circle, and there was like a basket being passed around, and there were two options. It was I love you, and I can't even remember the second one. And I picked I love you, which, if you know me, is not something I would typically use to start a poem, but um, I did. And what came of it was a poem that I wrote called Love Poem for the Everyday, which is here. Um, and I won't read it for you now, but it's on our website where this workshop is, which is under resources. And it's the line starters. So if you go to Write 253 and click on resources, you can find it there. So what I'm asking you to do is to just write a poem where all of the lines begin the same way. And here are some examples of line starters you can use. This goes out to I remember, I want to tell you, or I don't want to tell you, or you could alternate them. They say, they think that we, right? And so all of these open up opportunities for you to go in many different directions. And so the poem can be about whatever you want it to be, but just play with that notion of repetition and see what happens when you change up some of those line starters. So if you look at bonus number 2, repetition in poetry often has to do with setting up expectations and then breaking those expectations. So what happens when you stop starting the lines with the line starter that you pick, and then you resume it later on? So there's a lot you can do, and you can just have fun with it. Um, love to see what you come up with out of this workshop. We are doing open mics on Zoom every Tuesday at 6 p.m. You just have to let us know that you want to attend the open mic so we can send you the login info so we don't get Zoom bombed by a bunch of weirdos, which happened the first night we did it. But every Tuesday at 6, every Thursday at 3, we're doing Thursday at 3 writing workshops. We want to do them live. So hit us up if you want to join us next week when we do a workshop. We're also going to do some workshops with some community partners coming up in April and May to try to, just kind of broaden our perspective and the work that we do and work with other communities in Tacoma. So if you have an idea for something you want to see us do, hit us up. We're open. We want to try to build as much community as we can, even though we're not all in the same room right now. So I hope you all are well.